Back in 2006, a man from one of my favorite towns, Bakersfield, California. Well, he was first elected to Congress, and like me, he's the son of a firefighter. He even sold his own business so he could attend college and improve his life. I'd say he succeeded at that because today he works in Washington to preserve the American dream for hardworking Americans. Please welcome the House Minority Leader, Congressman Kevin McCarthy. Congressman, it's a delight to have you here. I so appreciate your coming, and I want to begin with this ridiculous story that has been circulating as a result of an article in The Atlantic with not one single named source that the president supposedly spoke with great disparaging words about our military. Congressman, no Republican member of Congress, House or Senate, has been in the presence of this president more than you. How do you react to that kind of stuff?
Well, it's offensive to me that they can lie like this. You know, I spend a lot of time with this president. I was over in Normandy for the 75th anniversary. I've never seen someone give such great respect to the individuals that fought for us, but lost their life for us as well. And to be able to write such lies, and how do you know that it's a lie? They had a commercial ready to go on Morning Joe this morning. How could that even be possible? And we're going to continue to see and hear this as we get closer to this campaign. But that's what's worst about politics. And you know this, Governor, that people will say anything in the last days to try to change the course. But to go to the character of how this president puts those who have served and dedicated, and I want to tell you a personal story. I was flying with this president, and we were going to go up and we were doing a rally. I was on the plane, and he comes back, he goes, "We're cutting the rally short, and I'm going back to Dover." Not for press or anybody else. We go in there because 2 Americans lost their lives. And I've watched this president with that family to sit there to console them. It's kind of the hardest thing he has to do as the leader of the free world. And I watched him stand out on that runway in pouring rain, no umbrella, just to honor their lives throughout, and he changed everything for it, and he does it each and every time. So when they write a story like this, it's so offensive to me because it's such the opposite of what I see and his actions of what he does.
Congressman, one of your colleagues in Congress from California, the unfortunate Speaker of the House, a job that I hope you will have after November, kind of got caught a little bit short this week, walking around a salon that was supposed to be closed, getting her hair washed, not wearing a mask, and then blames the salon owner for what happened. I mean, I think most Americans, even people on the left, can see through this. What on earth possesses someone to think that it's okay for her to be able to break the rules she goes out there and insists the rest of us are having to live with?
It's just appalling to think of that she's above the law. But if you've spent any time with Speaker Pelosi, she always lectures you. She lectures the president. She lectures the country. Even the way she holds her hands up when she talks, she almost feels that she's Queen Pelosi, that nothing applies to her, but she can tell everybody else what to do. And then when she gets caught with it, what is her first response? Not that I'm sorry, not that I was wrong, not that forgive me. No, go after the single small business owner mother, that somehow it's her fault that she got caught, that somehow she was set up walking in there. And you know what's interesting too? How many times have these Democrats gone after somebody in the administration saying they've done something wrong because the staff may have done something for them? Who set up that appointment? Her staff called and set up a private appointment to get her hair done against the rules. And I think she knows the rules pretty well because isn't her nephew the governor? She's pretty close to the governor. I think she understands what they are. Yeah. And who really knows the rules are these small businesses that are being put out of business, and now she wants to sue them? It's just appalling.
You know, you mentioned her nephew, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. He has been ruthlessly hard on churches. Riots seem to be okay, protests, that's fine. But if you're going to have a church service, then he's going to go in and take a lease away from a parking lot. He has threatened arrest with pastors. Congressman, I've never seen anything quite like this where churches were told they couldn't sing. If they were, a certain type of congregation, they couldn't chant. And they couldn't have more than 10 people in a building, even if it seated 5,000 people. What on earth has happened to your state?
I don't know. And I will tell you, in my household, I've never been so upset. My wife has never been so upset. I literally text the governor when he came out with his response for whether you can attend church. And you and I know the importance, especially going through something like COVID, that we need that fellowship. We need to seek what we know in this Bible and our Lord. We need that comfort right now. First of all, he opened up restaurants, and I texted him, and he had his chief of staff call me. And I asked him this question, okay, how did you determine how many people could be inside the restaurant when you opened them up? They said, oh, by square footage. Well, I happen to go to a church, and we're rather large church, right? We have a big building and many buildings. And I asked, well, in the church, you're limiting us to 100 people. How did you determine that? Well, we think that's enough. Well, not by square footage. And I said, last I checked, in the Constitution, it talks about religious freedom. It doesn't talk much about a restaurant. So how do you come to this conclusion? They listened to me patiently, but they made no changes. So you know what we do now? We go out on the grass, we lay something down, and we sit out there in a very large space because we want to hear the gospel. We want to be able to pray together. And I think in no greater time in our nation is that we need it now. But the idea that you're going to use government to go against freedom of religion is just wrong when you're sitting and looking that all church sizes aren't the same. If you have the square footage and that's good enough when it comes to eating, why can't that be good enough to praying? And you know, I called Pastor Rogers up and I said, you know what we need to do this Sunday? Let's not have service. Let's just have a protest. We'll be okay then.
Well, you know, it would be fair. You could just say you're protesting evil. You're protesting Satan, and therefore it's a legitimate function of the church. So let's talk about the election. 8 weeks away. Some of the polls haven't been all that favorable to the president, but it does seem that people are beginning to look at what's happening in major American cities, the riots, the looting, setting fires to federal and state buildings. Do you feel that there is a shift going on and that there are people who are recognizing that if Joe Biden and the Democrats get in power and get more power, that it means more of the mob rule?
Well, not only do I feel it, I see it. I'm on the ground. I've been traveling this week. There is real hope. I'm watching the enthusiasm continue to grow. And I think it really started going after you had 4 days of the Democratic convention and 4 days of the Republican convention. You had a real good contrast there. I mean, I watched the Democratic convention. I want to know what they're thinking. I do know they hate this president. I do know they want to defund the police. And I do know they want to raise our taxes. When I looked at the Republican convention, I looked at diversity. I looked at opportunity. I looked at hope of the future, that they wanted to renew our way of life. They wanted to rebuild this economy bigger than ever before. And just that contrast itself, I saw excitement. You remember Ronald Reagan? When you picture Ronald Reagan, you always see him smiling. Why? Because he understood that if you believed your philosophies and your principles brought people more freedom, why wouldn't you be happy about it? And that's what I see between these two parties. The Democrats were so angry, and they're just angry at the president. They can't tell me what they're going to do. And when I look at Joe Biden and his policies, now he's been in Washington a long time, 47 years. In fact, when he first went to the Senate, he served with people who were born in the 1800s. And here we have President Trump turning it on its head, literally listening to the voice that people would not listen to before. And that's who he's standing up for day in and day out. So I'm excited about this. And you know, we actually have real examples of it happening. You know, we had a special election in Los Angeles County and Ventura County for a congressional seat that Hillary Clinton carried, that the Democrats won by 9 points just a year and a half ago. It was in the middle of COVID. Gavin Newsom changed the election where it was an all-mail ballot. And you know what? We won. We won by 10 points with a first-generation American, Mike Garcia, who has never run before, but served his nation, went to the Naval Academy, flew jets, and graduated public school there and went back to work there. And you know the interesting part about it? The last time we switched a seat from Democrat to Republican in California was 22 years ago. So that just shows you an example of what I think is going to happen in November.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you how frustrating it must be. You're the leader of the Republicans in Congress. You guys have laid several things on the table for the Democrats that they claim that they wanted. DACA was one of them. Infrastructure was one. And most recently, police reform. And there was an open mind. It wasn't like this is it, take it or leave it. There was in some cases, for example, DACA, you were actually offering more than they ever asked for. Yes. But in every case, they took a walk. They literally walked out of the meeting. How frustrating is that, Congressman?
It's extremely frustrating because I hear somebody on the other side talk about an issue and want to care about it. Our government's designed to find common ground. And when we sit there and find common ground, you know what I find out from the other side, especially from Speaker Pelosi? She doesn't want to solve the problem. She wants a political campaign. She just wants to use it to campaign upon instead of solving it. I'll give you an example. She made an emergency meeting of Congress where everybody had to come back. But 1/3 of the Democrats didn't even show up because she'll pay you even if you don't show up on the Democratic side. And she was worried about the Postal Service, even though they had $14 billion in the bank and another $10 billion a line of credit. We put on the table, what about those who are unemployed? What about the small business workers? What about the police officers that need more training? We put that up on the floor to vote on. The Democrats voted that all down. They only want to talk politics. And that's the tough part. That's why when I look at your viewers and I talk to them, they ask how can they make a difference? If they go to takethehouse.com, you could retire Nancy Pelosi once and for all. And it will really unshackle what's been holding us back. I was just in Portland this week. I watched those families. This is not the city that they love, but they have a mayor that allows the mob rule. Nancy Pelosi says when these mobs do these things that are so despicable, people do what people will do. No, that's not. In America, we know the difference between right and wrong. In this election, it's not Republican versus Democrat anymore. It's a battle between freedom versus socialism. It's not the Democratic Party of old. They have sacrificed themselves and succumbed to this socialism. I mean, even President Obama says there is no difference between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. That's a real telling statement right there.
You know, I hope come January I have the opportunity to call you Speaker Kevin McCarthy. I really do. I want to thank you so much for joining us. Delight to have you. Please tell the people of your hometown, Bakersfield, that they've got a real fan in me. I love your city and great people there. So take good care of them, Congressman.